This is 10 reasons why gravity pisses me off. And let's just start with, I'm not even going to count this as one of them, but it's a meme about gravity. It gets talked about so much. Gravity's just a theory, it's not a fact. And so let's just read this. Universal gravity is a theory, not a fact, regarding the natural law of attraction. This material should be approached with an open mind, studied carefully, and critically considered. The universal theory of gravity is often taught in schools as a fact, when in fact it is not even a good theory. I was just surprised that this popped up the first thing when I typed in gravity is just a theory into Google. Usually these days they hide any type of material that might be leading people in correct directions towards truth. But this is something that you hear growing up all the time. Well, gravity is just a theory. But most people don't continue on in that thought to tell you the importance of that. Gravity is just a theory. It's a made-up theory that isn't even true, and it's not a good one. And so let's get to the beginning. Newton is a bitch. The very first time somebody tried talking to me about gravity, I knew they were full of crap. But the way that this place operates is through repetition. You'll be forced into believing what they want you to because they just keep pounding it into your brain year after year after year. And there's even some spellcraft with the word gravity that I'll get to at the end. But so gravity, you're sitting there in class, the teacher tells you about an apple and a tree falling from an apple, and the very first thing that came into my mind was, okay, what do you expect to happen? You have an apple, which is clearly more dense, heavy, as a child. Maybe my notions of density weren't perfect, but as a child I knew, okay, wait, but you have this apple. It's a lot heavier than air, right? Where do you want it to go? Where do you expect this thing to go? It's gonna go down when the tree doesn't support it anymore. That's something that I already knew existed as a child. It didn't need a new name. It didn't need to be a theory. It was something I already knew about. Hey, if you have something that's more dense than air and it's not supported by anything, it goes down. And so that's the very first thing about gravity that pisses me off is I've always known it's a bunch of bullshit, and it's something that people should already have intuition about at the age that they're being brainwashed, but they just pound it out of you. They pound you into submission through repetition, brainwashing. My second reason gravity pisses me off. Gravity is not G, 9.8 meters per second squared. Gravity is the insane theory that mass attracts mass. So, I mean, that's the biggest one. This is the biggest hurdle that most people don't ever get over. Most people, they can't even get past this hurdle of, did you know that gravity is not the idea that things fall? People literally think that gravity is the reason they don't fly off into the sky. Where it's like, why would you fly off into the sky? You're more dense than air. Where do you expect yourself to go? You don't need the earth to suck you into it, the mass of the earth to bend space-time, okay? That's sci-fi. That's what they try to teach you, is gravity. That earth is somehow so massive, it's bending space-time and sucking you towards it. So another thing that I want to talk about, G, little g, 9.8 meters per second squared is not gravity. When you talk to people about gravity is fake, outer space is fake, etc., one of their favorite thought experiments to come up with is, well, how come stuff falls in a vacuum? Which shows that they have no understanding of up and down. Let's say you put an object in a vacuum. Any object is more dense than a vacuum, so it's going to go down. There's nothing magical about that. You don't need gravity. Things that are more dense than the medium that they're suspended in go down. That's one of the facts of the way that God made this place. It actually goes back to Genesis 1. If you read Genesis 1, one of the very first things in Genesis 1 is that God created, there was a face of waters, and that was one of the first things. There was just water. Water always finds its level, and it's flat, and you got water, and then you got the air above it. Buoyancy was already established just at the very beginning, and up and down. The important thing is up and down was established at the start. And So the 9.8 thing. So in my mind, the whole thing about bowling balls and feathers fall at the same rate inside of a vacuum, if anything, that proves that gravity is a bunch of bullshit. If the reason that things fell was because mass was attracting mass, then you would expect a bowling ball to fall faster than a feather in a vacuum, because the bowling ball should be pulling itself to the earth more than a feather. So that's just another thing. They oftentimes have these wild uh, their arguments aren't good, and they try to prove things by just mystifying people. Like, yeah, that's a pretty cool fact that in a vacuum a feather and a bowling ball falls at the same rate. That doesn't prove gravity. Like I just said, if anything, the fact that they fall at the same rate in a vacuum kind of goes against the idea of gravity, mass attracting mass. But if you understand that all that there is buoyancy, then that shouldn't be surprising at all. Why wouldn't a feather fall at the same rate as a bowling ball if you take out the only thing that would make something fall slower? Air resistance, right? What would make something fall slower? It would be air resistance. So if you remove that, yeah, objects are going to fall at the same rate because everything falls at a constant rate. 9.8, that's just a way, it's a physical constant of a way that God made this place. It has nothing to do with mass attracting mass. Okay, I need to move on. However, before I move on from this picture, there's a very important thing from this picture. If you understand that every action has an equal and opposite reaction, this picture right here proves that gravity is fake and that gravity is only buoyancy. Because look, the two equal and opposite forces that we have at play in here, they're telling us that gravity is the force pushing down and then that buoyancy is the force pushing up. But those are equal and opposite forces. They're the same thing. It's just two different sides of the same coin. It's not a different force, gravity and buoyancy. They're literally the same force. They are the equal and opposite forces that determine whether things go up and down. And it's the same thing. It's giving it a different name for when things go down. That's what they do. And then they brainwash people into thinking that somehow the theory of gravity, mass attracting mass, which is wildly unproven. When in your science classes did you prove mass attracts mass? I'm not going to get into the Cavendish experiment in this video. That's a whole nother topic. Anyways, people need the very first step to waking up to the bullshit of gravity is to understand that gravity is not the same thing as stuff falls. Okay? Stuff falls because of buoyancy. That's it. Okay, number 3. Gravity is sci-fi bullshit theory that they use to explain everything away. And this is part of the magic of gravity, is that they equate gravity with something so set in stone like stuff falls, which everybody should already just totally understand from a young age, that stuff that's not supported falls because it's more dense than air. They make people think that gravity is that set in stone as the idea that stuff falls. So people go along their lives. It's the same thing as the way that they mock flat earth. They get people to, what, you don't believe in gravity? And then they'll like jump up. How come I'm not floating off? Well, it's because you're more dense than air. It has nothing to do with mass attracting mass. Yes, I am dubious of the claim that mass attracts mass. And I'm very dubious of the claim that the reason that I'm stuck here on flat ground is somehow because the mass beneath me is so massive that space-time itself is bent and it's like sucking me into it like a vortex. Does anyone feel like sucked towards the earth, like their mass is being attracted? So I want to read these quotes. So, I mean, to finish that thought process, because they get people to think that gravity is as well established as stuff falls, they can use gravity to explain away almost anything. Oh yeah, it's gravity. Because in people's minds, they'll be like, oh, well, that's a well-established, truthy thing. Gravity, I see stuff fall all the time. Okay. I like this quote by Albert Einstein. You can't blame gravity for falling in love. It's like Albert knew that gravity gets used for everything, gets blamed for everything. If there's some wacky phenomenon, blame gravity. Even though they tell us buoyancy, i.e., gravity, is the weakest force. There is gravity in wisdom, but no particular wisdom in gravity. I agree. The gravity is the first thing which you don't think. That's an interesting quote by Albert Einstein, if it is a real quote. Okay, I'm going to switch gears to something a little bit more mathy, I guess. Number 4, the three-body problem. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because it's complicated mathematics. The general gist of why gravity is stupid, three-body problem. Excuse me. Their whole notion of this universe that... Okay. Remember I just said that they admit that gravity is the weakest force. Then how is allegedly in the entire universe formed by gravity? It would be formed by the more strong forces. So it's because it doesn't exist. That mass does not attract mass in that way, in the way that they claim. That's not the reason that things fall. Okay. The three-body problem is the fact that if we make these assumptions about gravity, if we pretend that we live in a place where mass attracts mass, even having 3 objects, so like sun, moon, earth, if these things are balls and they do attract each other with their mass, that's called the three-body problem. It's chaotic. It doesn't have a nice solution. And what is our solar system up to? How many bodies are in this, what they claim to be a system revolving just on gravity? So this is something to go look into. I mean, you can just, I'll read certain parts of what I screenshotted. Unlike two-body problems, no general closed-form solution exists, as the resulting dynamic system is chaotic for most initial conditions. So what this always reminds me of, the fact that the three-body problem is actually chaotic and it's very hard to compute. We'll get to that in a second. This just always reminds me of the mocking that they do with, they'll tell you that they can, oh yeah, we sent a satellite to Neptune, it slingshotted around one of Neptune's moons. They can't calculate this stuff to incredible accuracy. No, even just a simple three-body problem is chaotic and doesn't have good solutions. Okay. This goes all the way back to Newton. Anyways, you can see that people continue to work on this. It became of technical importance in the 1720s as an accurate solution would be applicable to navigation, determination of longitude at sea. So here's the thing. People have traveled the seas while knowing that it's flat. You get people that come up out of the woodworks, how do you travel the seas without GPS? Okay, I'm sorry that people today are boneheaded and they can't do anything without an electronic telling them the answer to things. But I guarantee to you that there were people in the past who knew Earth was flat and they navigated just fine. Just read the bottom sentence. However, the accuracy of the lunar theory was low, and then they give some excuses. A lot of times their maths are just complete bullshit, and then they'll just make up excuses for it. Yeah, the accuracy was very low. Again, you could go research the three-body problem. People are still working on this stuff in 2017. If Xi Zhen Liao are making new strategies for three-body problems, how's NASA slingshotting things around the sun 15 times and then around Venus and then wherever, you know? So while a system of 3 bodies interacting gravitationally is chaotic, And if you know something about the people who run this place, they thrive on this concept of making people believe that they live in a chaotic place. Okay, but a chaotic system would mean that it doesn't do what we see. What do we see on Earth? You can build a building on Earth, and every year the sun will shine through the same exact spot, the same exact place. You can build your buildings to line up with the constellations, and hundreds of years later, that guess what? They're still going to line up with the constellations because it's not a chaotic system. That's not chaotic. It's static. If you think about it. So let's get into. Oh, I guess I have one more point about the three-body problem. I say this a lot. It's kind of a mathy thing when I say it. This Earth system, the universe, everything we can observe is discrete, meaning step by step. 1, 2, day 1, day 2, day 3. It's not continuous. It's not like it started all of a sudden and then the stopwatch is just running for the rest of eternity. No, God started it, and then there was the first day, and then there's the second day. This place works off of counting numbers. It's not continuous. Okay, look at the cartoons that we get here. The fifth thing that pisses me off about gravity is that they try to say that gravity is the reason that the tides happen. The tides are very mysterious. I'm not going to claim to even understand how tides work, but it is not because the moon is pulling on the... That is just a bullshit lie that they say to explain away the tides. And this is where, going back to Albert Einstein, you can't blame gravity for love, but you can blame it for pretty much anything else out there. Oh, the tides are very mysterious, so let's just say that it's gravity that's doing all the work. And I guess just to explain why I don't think that the tides line up at all with the moon and the sun. You can have the sun and the moon both in the sky, but have a low tide. So anyways, I just think that the tides are very interesting and confusing phenomenon, and they're able to just explain it away by saying, oh, this magical gravity, which is actually the weakest force. And again, there's no such thing as gravity, it's just buoyancy. So what really does cause the tides? I have no idea. Maybe it's electrical. That's a lot of this stuff probably is electrical, instead of gravity. And that's where modern science, there is a grain of truth in certain things. When scientists do science, like they do collect data sometimes, it's just that the sandbox that they're playing in is all wrong. But, I'm just bringing up things that I think of when I research gravity. People bring up, the Earth spinning. They bring up pendulums and how pendulums, they have these pendulums in the grand old cathedrals. It's very interesting that's where they put them. But the pendulums always look metallic. And I'm like, well, how do we know that this doesn't have something to do with electromagnetism? With the thing is they'll present you with something mysterious. This is just an MO. This is why I'm explaining this. They present you with something mysterious like the tides, and then they say, here you go, I have the answer. And all that they're presenting you is some bullshit explanation. They're not proving anything. Nobody has ever proved to you that the moon causes the tides. They've just suggested it. And they make this tangled web of lies, this house of cards, tidal locking. They also try to explain this into the moon only having one side. We only ever see one face of the moon. Why do people think it's a ball? It's a disc. The sun and the moon are discs. It's also why they have hard edges. You can't have an object that's allegedly millions of miles away that has a hard edge to it. Just think about that. Okay, continuing on. The sixth reason that that gravity pisses me off is that it creates a directionless, chaotic existence. I love knowing that there's only one up and there's only one down. If I hang a plumb bob right here, if I hold something, my down is the same down as somebody in Australia. They are not upside down for me. It's ridiculous. And this is the thing that people make fun of all the time. This is another joke that gets thrown around readily. Oh, down under. Those people in Australia that are underneath us, In order to believe in gravity, you really need to believe that there's people underneath you that are being sucked upwards towards you. It's ridiculous. And there's no proof of it. Who can prove to me that right now, the people in Australia, if they get a plumb bob, who can prove to me that their plumb bob is hanging towards me and that my plumb bob is hanging towards them? Has anyone ever drilled through the whole earth, drilled to find China? They can't drill very far down, and it starts to get very hot, which is interesting. No liquid core found, though. Not like the cartoons. Okay, the 7th reason that gravity pisses me off are the stupid tricks that they use to fake being weightless. They use vomit comets, reduced gravity aircraft. Scuba, NASA's grueling underwater test for astronauts. The ISS is in a pool. They do scuba. It's scuba. That's all it ever has been. That's all it ever will be. And it is water up there. This is like a double thing. The fact that they do the ISS underwater, it's kind of hinting at the fact that space is water. What is space? I mean, maybe that could be a whole video. Like, at a certain point, it is very mysterious. What the heck is Neptune? They'll tell us weird things like, on Uranus, it's raining diamonds. And they try to blow people's minds with facts like that. First of all, how could anyone corroborate something like that? Are you telling me that you have a test? Show me your test. Well, what's your test for testing how it rains diamonds on Neptune? But the thing is that they just hypnotize people with nonsense like that, when in reality it's probably much more interesting. Maybe Neptune is a giant diamond of some sort, and I don't know. Who knows? And maybe because the thing is that all of the questions that they get people to think about outer space still apply to real life, to reality. You know, God created the waters. Do the waters just extend indefinitely in all directions? Buoyancy does exist, right? So the air does get layered even beyond the heavens. So does there become a vacuum at a certain point? Is that outer darkness? Is what they tell us like outer space? Is that just like outer darkness? Anyways, but the point of this video is gravity is bullshit. It's not balls. It's not space balls up there. And the mass of objects attracting the mass of other objects is fantasy. It's not reality. What about that time the astronaut nearly drowned in space? And they get to say stuff like this and chuckle about it because space is everything. Space is all around us. It's right here. Well, there's space right in front of me. So they don't even say outer space here. Astronaut nearly drowned in space. Well, what's space? Spacewalk. What? They're not. It's scuba. Anyways. The 8th thing that pisses me off about gravity and sticking to the ISS and all that in this topic is just the mocking that goes with it. There's so much mocking that goes with it. They go over the top with it. Let's bring a dune buggy up. Let's go play golf on the moon. They're taking the piss. It can't be. It's not even good. That is part of the MO. Part of the MO of the way that these people work. It's not even good. They don't even fake it perfectly. They fake it with errors on purpose. That's part of the magic. They make it over the top on purpose. They make it not believable on purpose. Is it believable that they would bring a gorilla suit up on the ISS? Of course that's not believable. Let's do it. Is it believable that somebody would bring 4 different flutes? I don't know why. This sticks with me. This stupid lady. Just whatever. They were so smug talking about, oh, I brought 4 flutes on the space station. Do you really think somebody could bring 4 different flutes into outer space? Do you think that's a little excessive? They also brought some other flute. You know what other flute this person's talking about? Yeah, the one in your pants, Coleman. Okay, so the 9th reason gravity pisses me off is how it's overused. Einstein had the great quote about, you can't blame gravity for falling in love. And it's the weakest force. I think that this is just a hint that it doesn't exist. Mass simply doesn't attract mass, but there is such thing as buoyancy. And the very last reason, the 10th reason that I hate gravity is because it's just a key component of the satanic deception. Gravity is satanic. Buoyancy is the truth. Buoyancy is the truth. It's simple. It makes sense. Everybody understands it from a young age. Gravity is satanic deception that is essential to their whole ball earth lie. So that's why I hate it. And now I'm finally getting into, I mentioned earlier how there's some spellcraft with the word gravity. Well, they gave gravity a second meaning, which they love to do this, where let's just go ahead and define gravity to mean something so important and serious. So there's some spellcraft right there in the word. They make their fake thing serious just by declaring it to be. Gravity becomes this word meaning something very important and serious. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and God bless everyone.